Welcome to Liverpool City Region Creating Careers, and we're joined today on today's seminar by Angie and Jamie from Wates Group, who are going to talk to you about Build Your Construction Career. We're looking forward to an informative session, and students should have completed the pre-work for this webinar, and no doubt there'll be some interesting questions for the Q&A session at the end. Students, please use the Q&A button on your screen to post any questions you would like answering today as we actually go through the webinar. I'll now hand over to Angie and Jamie. So welcome.
Hi, morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully you can see this. Da, da, da.
Yeah.
We're just saying earlier, usually we'd be sat in a site cabin or actually visiting schools and colleges and speaking to you all in person. So please bear with us. We're just getting used to the virtual world. So by the end of this session, you will have had a brief introduction to the Wates Group, some insights into some of our team and how they joined the business, and an overview of some of the routes into construction. And there is an opportunity to ask questions throughout the presentation, but if you can type them into the Q&A at the bottom of the control. So who are we? So hello from us. I'd like to introduce Jamie Borden, who's our project manager. Jamie, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are today.
Morning, Angie. Yep, I'm based in St Helens today. So we're building a new fire station, which was on an old industrial site. It used to be an old coal mine here in the 1880s. So we transformed the site into a brand spanking new fire station. So, and that's due to go operational in the next couple of weeks. So a bit about myself. I've been in the construction industry for about 20 years. I went through school, went to sixth form, and then I went to university in Manchester, and then studied construction management at university. When I left university, I went to work for a company in London where I did a graduate training scheme. And from that graduate training scheme, I've then learned many different courses and years of experience. So I really enjoyed it.
That's lovely. Thanks, Jamie. We're going to be asking you more about your role further on. Thank you. My name's Angie Eardley. I'm the Community Investment Manager. A little bit like Jamie, I've been doing employability within construction for over 20 years. And I support the project teams out on site. There are 3 elements to my role. I work within the pre-construction team, supporting our tenders, so making sure we do winning tenders to win work. But then when we're on site, I'll work with Jamie and other project managers to ensure that we are fulfilling all our community commitments, such as helping students into the industry. That's one of them. Helping people into work experience on site, creating opportunities with our supply chain, and supporting people into work. So that's a little bit about, that's the first element. The second part of my role, that's the second. The third part of my role is reporting at the end of the job. So doing a project impact report where Jamie and I might spend a few hours piecing together everything we've done to support the community. And that's what we can showcase then to the client.
And that's okay. That's one of the best things that we do as part of our role, is actually giving something back to the communities where we operate. So building a building is very rewarding, and it's great to see people use it once you've worked on it for 2 years, 3 years. But as you go through the process, some of the things that you can get involved in to support the community around the projects where we work, it's really inspiring, and Angie plays a huge part in that.
Oh, thanks, Jamie. So I'm going to talk about Wates Construction now, or Wates Group. We were established over 120 years ago. Am I right, Jamie, that 2 of the Wates family, 2 brothers, actually built a home in the London borough, and then have grown the business to the huge business it is today? It's still family owned, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. And when you start with Wates, you get to meet the Wates family when you go down to Leatherhead. So yeah, it's really nice how they're still involved with the company.
That's right. And we are made up of lots of different business units, and on our website you can research about the different jobs we do. Currently, Jamie and I work for Wates Construction, so typical builds within our business are fire stations, which Jamie's working on now. Also leisure centres, academies, schools. Anything else, Jamie, that you've been involved in?
Mainly schools, leisure centres, yeah, like you say. We've done office blocks. We're looking at apartments, student accommodation. So construction is quite a wide-ranging area that you can get involved in pretty much anything. We did a project a couple of years ago, which was on a waste treatment facility, which was on again a brownfield site where they had reports of chemical munitions from the First World War. And we transformed it into a fantastic new project and a new site for the council. So yeah. Get involved in absolutely anything. It's so exciting.
Anything and everything. And then behind the scenes, we have Wates Group services. So, for example, we have HR and finance, that's human resources and finance. We have an IT and legal team, and we have a community and sustainability team, which I'm part of. So lots of different roles. I thought we'd look at the construction project life cycle, and because there might be roles within the industry that you've never even thought of. I know when I joined Wates Group, I'd never even considered that there were all these wonderful, exciting job roles. So if we start off with the client, they could be from local authority, a private business, a property developer, or even an individual. And then we go to consultants. So we've got architects, designers, surveyors. These are typically office-based and work on a number of projects at the same time. So then we come to the main contractor. This is Wates in this case. Typically with manage and control projects where Jamie is now, site-based, and work on one project at a time during the physical construction. And I know Jamie's going to show some photographs later of the build of the fire station, which is in St Helens. And then we've got our specialist subcontractors who specialise in different trades and crafts, and we're going to be seeing some of their work shortly. They will work for main contractors on site, but we couldn't build buildings without them.
It's interesting to note that when you actually look at the different roles in construction, you might think to yourself, well, I enjoy playing computer games, so where does that fit into a construction process? So the architect, for example, the software they use is very similar to how they produce computer games. So buildings are designed via computer systems, and it's all integrated between the structural engineer or the architect. So there's lots and lots of different skills that you need to build a building project, and it's not just somebody with a hammer and a box of nails that can hammer timber together. It's if you're good at maths, if you're good at science, if you're good at design, there's hundreds and hundreds of different skills and job roles that you can actually look at.
Fantastic, thank you. And our team is made up of many talented and skilled people. You can see Hannah there and Dan. Hannah joined us, Jamie, as part of your team, I think, when she had wanted to be in building services, and now she's moved over to be an assistant surveyor. So she's doing a degree, and she was part of your team on a couple of jobs, I think, and has now been promoted. Yeah. Dan is from the commercial team, so I think he's a project surveyor now. Am I correct there, Jamie?
Yeah, he's a proper surveyor now. Yeah, so he's gone through the training process, and then he's working through the on the project training. So, and that's one of the benefits of working with a company that gives you responsibility and trains you up and provides the education as well. So you don't have to be the finished article when you first come into the industry. There's a lot of training, a lot of courses. There's a lot of support from people within the industry to help you achieve your goals.
Thank you. And we've got an Ask Jamie section. So if you want to ask any questions, you can get typing away. And of course, you can ask me anything as well. I'll do my best to answer. We've got all sorts of questions last week, so anything goes. So we talked about some of the different roles. It's an exciting industry to be part of, and we've just listed here some of the roles that you know, we work alongside every day. And on the Go Construct website, you can research what, you know, behind the title, what does the job entail? And so there's lots of different ones there, but have a look. Work experiences. It's
interesting to say as well, Angie, that even if you do one of those jobs, you can move between the different roles. So it's not fixed that you're a project manager or you're an electrician. You can move across. So if you're an electrician, you could move into some of the management side. You could go down the design side and become a building services engineer. So if you get bored in one of the roles, you can actually move across quite easily.
That's a really good point there, Jamie, because we do have a lot of progression routes, don't we, for people?
That's right, yeah.
So can you think of an example? I can. I know that Lewis started as a commercial administrator, so he was a painter on site and then fancied something different. And since then he's moved up to be a regional buyer in the procurement team. And have you got any examples there, Jamie?
Yeah, so typically if you've got in the olden days, the joiners on site, the people that would do any of the carpentry work like fitting doors or making shelves or whatever it is on site, they would then progress into the site management role, and then from the site management they can go into the project management. So because they're out on site, they're using their minds with the measurements, they're very good with numbers, and they're very good at sort of seeing the detail and how things are finished on site. So there's a progression from the trades through to some of the other roles, and again, site managers can progress into health and safety managers. So it's really interesting how you can move across. Some of the project managers might move into the design manager. So there's lots of stuff, lots of opportunities out there as well. Commercially, some of the quantity surveyors may move into the legal side, into lawyers, or people that like reading books, you know, become lawyers. They can move across into quantity surveying. So.
Yeah, because I think Charlotte, one of your surveyors on site, Charlotte trained as in law, didn't she? And now is a quantity surveyor.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, and so to get a foot in the door, where do people, I always think work experience is a really great way to do this. Have you had experience of managing work experience placements, Jamie?
Yeah, definitely. When you're doing the work experience, we tend to, especially in Wates, we give a different roles. So you have maybe a couple of weeks with a site manager, you have a couple of weeks with a quantity surveyor, a couple of weeks with maybe the building services team, a couple of weeks on site, and you can see how things actually progress. So in construction, you get a bit of a taster of everything, and you can see what you prefer and where you like to work, or what kind of attracts you into different sections. I know we did something with Career Ready where we took one of the students across to an architect's practice, and he could see all the latest gadgets and the information systems they use. So there's loads of different opportunities there, and there's during the placements you can take little bite-sized pieces and go and visit and see what you like.
Wonderful, thank you. And if anybody wants to do a condensed version of the work experience that Jamie just mentioned, we can put all that into a week's programme. We'll probably do a couple of days virtual, but then get you out on site. So you can see my email address there, angie.eardley@wates.co.uk. And I've asked if you can send a CV. I appreciate that you might not have a CV yet and you might need some help with that. Just drop me an email and tell me what you're interested in, and we'll take it from there. We're doing that, aren't we, Jamie, with a couple of students who are, I think, age 15 to 16, wanting to get into the industry. And so we've set action plan sessions. It's exciting to be part of that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting to see how people develop as well. How CVs these days are kind of how we correspond with different companies, but there's a certain way of writing that people like to see the CVs produced. And also in construction, there's different ways that you can actually look at interviews. So it's not all about the CV, it's also about what experience you can gain and gather from the industry and people that you can speak to. It was funny how when I first started, somebody said to me, how would you sort of mix some concrete by hand on site? And I was stood there thinking about it, and the way I did it was completely back to front. It said you're going to tire yourself out very quickly, and in construction people teach each other the best and the easiest way of doing things. And it's all passed on through knowledge, and that. So I think construction as an industry we're very good at teaching people, very good at communicating with people on site, and passing on the knowledge as well. And people are looking for new recruits and new people coming out of school, because the future of the industry is based on people coming through. So I think it's one of the best industries, I think, for training people up. I really do.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jamie. So, top tips when applying for jobs in the industry. Obviously, you might not be at that stage yet, but get into some good habits now with your employability, and you know, how you can stand out from the crowd in a good way. Think about what you post on social media. Social media is such a powerful tool, isn't it? And sometimes it's better to have a professional account, like Jamie and I have a professional Twitter account. You might say Facebook, Instagram, or whatever else for your personal life. But we do know of companies that do check people's social media accounts. So you might want to be mindful of that as you progress now into the world of work. Another idea is, you know, we talked about researching a job role through Go Construct. Find out what job role you like, and then research the companies that you would like to work for. Update your CV, which is what we talked about. Create a covering letter. We can help with all of this. Later down the line, depending on what job you want to do, if you're working on site with Jamie and the team, you would need a CSCS card, and that is Construction Skills Certification Scheme. It's a mouthful, but if you're interested, then that's the first step really, to do a CSCS test online, and that will get you on site to work in a, you know, be aware of the health and safety aspects around you within construction. Use your network, a little bit like if you come to work on one of our sites, Jamie would be part of your network then, and so would I, and the people that you meet on site. We've talked about work experience. Sorry, go on.
No, it's just interesting with the work experience. When I finished college, one of the guys from the industry came in, one of the project managers, and he said to me, well, have any of you actually had any work experience? And we were in the room, and we looked around, we were in the room, and we said, no, we haven't. They said, well, why not? He said, there's loads of people that would give you some beneficial work experience, and it doesn't have to be strictly related to construction. You don't have to go and drive an excavator, or you don't have to go and build brick wall or anything like that. I think just relevant sort of business experience, or working in it, being able to get out of bed in the morning, getting into work on time, and being able to be in a responsible position. I think there's loads of benefits in doing that. And when you actually apply for a job or a job role, if you can say, I've got my CV in a good fashion, or also I've done this in my spare time, I've got a part-time job, or I've done some placements, or I've done work experience, and it makes a huge difference to a future employer, because they can look and say, oh, actually, yeah, the reason I can see them in a future role, I can see them I can see how they'll fit into the business. And that was one of the key things I took from when I was from a student.
That's a really good tip, Jamie. I remember years ago interviewing for an apprentice electrician with a company. I was with the director of the company, and they'd asked me to sit in. And I remember having a number of applicants, and the one that stood out to the director was a young man that had a paper round, and he ended up giving him the job because he could demonstrate that he was punctual, reliable, going out in all weathers and still, you know, delivering the paper. So you wouldn't think that it would be relevant, would you? But it absolutely was. Yeah, thanks for that. And then mock interviews. It's so important. It's really hard to sell yourself sometimes, isn't it, in an interview situation, big yourself up. But with doing mock interviews, even with family or friends, that really helps to build your confidence. And then maybe read up on some interview tips. You can go on YouTube and just type in interview skills, and there's some fantastic little videos that you can see. So some of those essential skills, Jamie, you've just mentioned there on the right hand side: enthusiasm, teamwork, good communication, etc., etc. So
the thing about the interview tips as well is that I know people that get nervous or worry about interviews. And once you've done a couple of interviews, I find it's they kind of repeat the questions. They always just try to find out a bit about yourself and what you can do. And I think the interview is once you can relax and you actually talk about yourself with the interviewer, I think they tend to flow quite naturally. So they're not something to worry about. I think the interview process is there just to find, somebody that they can get on with and see how they fit into the business role.
Yeah, so it's really important to try and relax, even though it's a very nerve-wracking situation sometimes. Yeah, a little bit like this, really.
Yeah. I didn't see that.
Okay, so I hope that's been useful. We've got some time for questions, I think, now, haven't we?
We have, yes. Thanks, Angie. Thanks, Jamie. That was a really informative session. I think you covered a lot of questions that we've got in as well. But just before we actually go into the questions, I suppose during COVID time, everybody's interested to know how people are working, and I can obviously. You've mentioned, Jamie, you're on site today. So have you been on site all through this COVID period, or has the impact been on the construction industry for you?
Yeah, it's been a very difficult period since March. There's been a lot of different information that's been hard to sort of process, and things that have come from central government and from our own safety teams. But there's a thing called the Construction Leadership Council produced some guidance for us to follow. So Wates as a company, we actually paused for 2 days. So back in March, there was a lot of conflicting information, do this, don't do this, do this. And so that 2-day pause where we stopped working on all our sites across the country, and we actually reviewed our processes in accordance with the construction leadership guidance. So it was things like we had to do full-time cleaning on site. We had to ensure we had additional space and people could move around the site 2 meters apart. And then we had to review what construction operations we had in place at the time. So if people had to work within a meter, then you had to review whether that job was actually necessary, or whether you could do it with one person. Or so on site at St Helens, we brought in additional canteen space for the operatives. We staggered the shifts as well, so we didn't want everybody turning up on site all at the same time. And we spoke to the company as well, and spoke to the people, and found out how people were actually feeling about working on site. So a lot of the companies that were here, they've got a duty to their staff, and they've worked with people as well for 20, 30 years. It's a real sort of family industry in the Northwest, that people know pretty much everyone that works within the industry. So it changed. I think we're up to revision 5 now of the construction leadership guidance. And obviously St Helens at the minute is quite a high area for coronavirus. So again, we just make sure there's no non-essential visitors come to site. It was a huge shame for us, because we were going to do some engagement activities with some of the local colleges and local primary schools. And obviously we've had to try and do that online, which isn't as good as meeting people up in person. But I think one of the biggest challenges is just trying to keep people 2 meters apart. And when you normally greet people, I think you just want to naturally shake people's hands, and it's really hard.
Yeah, and I suppose as well on construction sites, you've not just got 1 or 2 people working here. You've got, as you've mentioned, quite a lot of different teams that are working on these sites as well. So you've got a lot of people coming on and off at different times on different days as well. So that must have been quite hard to manage. So
yeah, it's I mean, I take my hat off to people that work on some of the larger residential jobs where they've got a 40, 50 story building, and they've got 300 people on site, and they've got to make sure they're all safe and working responsibly on their projects. On here, we had about 40 to 50 people working at any time. Back in March, some of the local quarries was closing in the area, so we had to send off for different materials, and that's where Lewis, as our buyer, he was invaluable to us, because we had to try and find out who's opening, who's closing, who's furloughed, just to try and keep the operations going on site. Yeah. So trying to get hold of sanitizer, overalls and dust masks and things like that, because all the face masks and that, they're all used by the NHS. So again, we had to then review our systems in line with what we can procure and what doesn't take anything off the NHS. So yeah, it was quite a difficult couple of months, and it still continues now. So
yeah. And Jamie, are you wanting to share some photographs?
Yeah, so we've got a few photographs.
And then we can, hopefully that might help with some of the questions that we've got. I know that you've got some really interesting photographs, I think students would love to see of the site that you've been developing.
So I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Fantastic. So this is Pilkington's old factory. So when we first took over the site, it was basically it was a flat slab. There used to be a factory on there. They demolished. And back in the 1880s, there used to be a colliery. So there's a coal mine about 450 meters deep underneath the site. And then from about the 1920s, there was a glass making furnace on the site. So if you imagine on the left-hand side, that was the experimental furnace. So that was an electrical furnace where they tried to make glass in about the 1990s. So that's what was left behind. And then on the right, we've got the chimneys. Where our site is, they used to have chimneys on our site. So once we started, we had to break out all the steel structure and all the basements and all the concrete walls. So you can see, I mean, some of those beams there on the left-hand side, they were over 1/2 meter thick. So it's about 200 ton of steel that was removed from the project. And then this is the bit that I love the best is some of the plant and equipment that you can actually get in construction. So as you go on different sites, you try to get bigger and bigger machines and more equipment. So you've got a couple of excavators there, and then the big tipper truck there, the Moxie, that you can just put as much material into that and that'll drive around. So with a big tire, so it'll get over any obstacles. One of the things environmentally that we wanted to try and do is keep all the materials on site, so we're not putting it into a truck and taking it off on the highway. So we kept a lot of the material, and then on the left-hand side where all the concrete is, we were crushing that up, and that formed the new foundations to the building.
Again, quite a specialised job, driving those large vehicles.
And again, it's very much like playing the PlayStation. You've got the controls of the machine that you can drive it about, and you can start off with smaller machines, and companies will pay for the training, you know, to get people through that. So yeah, it's a good, especially when it's raining, it's a good job to have. It's got air conditioning in the machines as well, so it's good in the summer. So on the left-hand side there, you can see some of the burnt marks on where they got the hole where the steels are. So in the ground, there was flues that took the hot gases from the furnace up to the chimneys. So all those chimneys that you saw, there was all like little tunnels that ran everywhere. So we had to dig those out and fill those in. And you can see on the left-hand side there where you can see more of the little tunnels that were running everywhere. So once we excavated everything out, on the top right, you can see where the mound of material is that's been placed. And we then had to fill that back in with all the crushed material. So then we're on the left-hand side there, you can see the guys in the Jeeps and the little pickup trucks. So we had some engineers. So this is where, if you're good at science or you're good at maths, you can look at ground engineering, you can look at geology, you can look at what makes up the ground. So the structural engineer, they'll be looking at the foundation design. And then you've got the guys or people in the office that will then produce, you know, the designs and the specification what we're working to. And then on the right hand side, you've got people in the machines and dumpers, and you've got the engineer, the site engineer, who are actually putting the project back together again. So on the left, you've got a crushing unit. So that is a remote control crushing unit. So they'll load it up at the top, and then it comes out, and all the brick and the stone is all made to a certain size at the front. And on the right hand side, that's a testing piece of equipment. So that testing piece of equipment there costs about £16,000 and gets calibrated. So it takes about 3 or 4 weeks to calibrate that. So every layer of the foundation was tested in 200 millimeter layers. So it's about 4 meters worth of testing for 200 mil layers. Then you got on the left hand side, you can see some of the glass that was left behind from we were digging out we were crushing that material. So you can see where you've got more flues and you've got more glass. And that all then went into the foundation. So if you go on the Northwest Construction Hub website, you can actually see there's a couple of case studies there. And there's some fantastic projects in the Northwest that will show you all the wonderful things that we do in construction. So there's one of, I think Kears have put one on for the Shakespeare North building. And again, you can see some of the tunnels and some of the experiences we've had on here. And we work at night, but we get loads of lighting in, so it's just like working in the daytime. And you can see the size of the site with all the drainage material. So it might even be that the jobs involved in construction is supplying the materials to the project. So we take materials from across the country. So it's not only just the stuff that you can actually see when we're building. There'll be things in manufacturers, there'll be delivery jobs to get to site as well. And then one of the aerial shots, you can see where you got St Helens Stadium in the background, and then Tesco. But this was all built on canals and collieries, and this is a huge story of sort of redevelopment. And you can see where our site fits into the neighbourhood. You can see the train line on the right hand side of the photo, and these train lines have been going since the 1850s. And the canal, I don't know if you can see the canal on the photograph, just to where to the left of St Helens Stadium there's a canal that runs down through there, and they used to bring the sand on the barges and then put it onto the train and then shunt it into the furnaces. And we were finding all the train lines when we were digging up through the basement of the new build. So anybody that's interested in computer graphics, so you can see on the screen here how we use the computer graphics to design temporary work. So and this is how we build it on site. So you start at number one, you assemble all the frames, and then you put the frames together, and that supports the earth while you're digging holes into the ground. And by using they produce little cartoons and videos that you can actually watch, and that just tells the guys very simply how to do the temporary work safely and correctly. And it's brilliant for us because it's a step-by-step process. So hopefully when you do it, you don't get it wrong. And this is produced by somebody in the office. And again, our buildings are designed to a similar sort of standard that they can produce cartoons and fly-throughs. And nowadays, the modern way of producing building designs is that you can actually just see everything, and you can click on something, it'll tell you what that product is. And if ever you need to order a new light bulb or a new air conditioning unit, you can just click on it and it'll come up with a list of what the materials are. And then you can see some more on the bottom right, how the design of the building is all color coded and built. So when we actually set the building out on site, we set the building out to millimeters. So each of these columns will be set out onto pre-arranged holding down bolts, and everything will be milled in a factory and brought to site, and that's all made to millimeters. So usually the tolerance on a steel frame is within 5 to 10 millimeters. And then you can see those bolts. So this is the ground floor slab. So the steel frame will sit on those bolts, and you can see the metal reinforcement that's fixed together inside the concrete, and then the steel frame will sit on that. So when we got a photograph later on, or when you see in the St Helens sort of fire station, the latest photographs, you see the fire engine actually sat on the slab, sat on all of this. But you tend to forget all that, and you just look at the outside now. And you can see some of the steel frame taking shape. We've got a mobile crane there, and again a mobile crane driver. You've got the steel erectors and the blue cherry pickers bolting together the steel. And then some of the things that I would do is I would plan some of the safe access routes and exclusion zones and make sure that the operatives can work safely and there's nobody working within exclusion zones. We have to sequence the activities on site. So this is done using, I've got an iPad that I can use with my iPad pencil, and I can just sketch on where today's access routes are and send that to the team. And then you can see the steel frame taking shape with some curbs and some tarmac. And then on the building, you can see the envelope being built as well. The scaffolders involved, doing the edge protection. And some of the designs from the architects, so where we said, again, people that are good at graphics, if anybody's quite creative and they can look at a blank canvas of a site, of a building site, and they can say, well, this is how you want it. So the client might say, well, I want a gym in it, I want a kitchen in it, I want 5 toilets, I want 3 classrooms. So then the architect will then look at it and he would say, well, this is the best layout, or you could have this, or you could have that. And then the client will then say, yep, that works for me. And the architect would have to know how many staircases it needs to meet the building regulations, what size windows go into the project, and then we can then cost it as a building company. So, and that's why I say there's so many different things that you can get involved in onto a project. It's a fantastic industry. So when you go on the inside, some of the brickwork, we've got the fire socks around the window frame, so that stops any fire spreads down through the side of the cavity. And again, you can see the red cladding taken on on shape. And then internally, we've got some of the internal services. So Angie mentioned about Hannah earlier. You can see where we've got pipework, sprinkler system, we've got basket tray where the cables go. And again, you've got the bricklaying, and you've got some of the plasterboard taking shape as well. So each individual trade, these are all the different trades that we've got that work on a construction site. So it's honestly, there's hundreds and hundreds of different roles and the things that you can get involved in.
How many people can you have on site at any one time, Jamie? That's been a question.
You can have as many as you want. It just depends that as a project manager, you've got to make sure that the people on site actually work together safely. So that you can have as many as you want, and clearly you'll go quicker if you have more people on site. But there comes a number that if you put too many people on site, that they start working on top of each other, that you have to then slow down a little bit just to make sure that they can complete their activity. So it's very much on the Go Construct website, there's a planning exercise. So you have to get the sequence right. So before you put the roof on, you have to put the foundations in to put the steel frame up. And then before you do all the painting internally, you have to make sure that the roof's on, it's not leaking, and it's going to be water damage. So it's more about getting the sequence right than the number of people. But if you've got too many people bumping into each other, again, you'll attract damages, and people will be sort of doing half of it, and then they won't be able to finish until somebody else has done their bit. So that's pretty much sort of a third of my time is just making sure we've got the right sequence and the right people are coming in on time and doing what they should be doing. On the photo on the bottom left, again, you can see on site, we put some of the site plans on. So that's just so people know where things are on the build, and then we can do our daily collaboration, our planning meetings. So there's a lot of work goes into making sure that people know where they get working and tomorrow's activities as well. So you don't want to be digging a hole and then you put a crane on top of it or next to it, and then people can't work because you've got exclusion zones. So then you've got things like the kitchen, that's the extract hood. So if you're in the kitchen at home and you can see the extract hood above the cooker, so they've got one of those built and that's fixed to the structure. And you've got the appliance bay doors, so the roller shutter doors where the engines come out. And if you're good at electrics, you've got the electricians on site do all their distribution boards. It always makes a project look finished when you turn all the lights on. It always looks fantastic. So we did an external emergency lighting test and a nighttime lighting test to make sure the lights worked, and it was fantastic because the whole building lights up, and it's you can get some fantastic lighting schemes on some buildings as well. So and that's the bit that makes it all worthwhile, is when you start to see the end user and the client actually start to come on board and have a look at some of the items. It's I can remember I did a project once, we handed over, and then the following day after handover, there was a mother and their small child was walking across a bridge, and you think all those hard days of work and the hard hours that you put in to make it, and then the end user or the wider world use it, it gives you such a buzz when you're working in construction. That's one of the things that really makes it worthwhile. So hopefully the station will go operational in the next couple of weeks, and you can see the engine start to roll out of here. It's going to be fantastic for us. Again, you can see some of the planning that goes into it. So we use graphics, and it's all about communicating with people and just using the stickers, the signage, and just loads of planning. So that's pretty much on my photos. I don't know if there's anything else that we want to sort of go through.
That's great. You can take your screen. I think we've got a couple of questions. We've just got some time to do a few more questions as well, if you're both all right.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating, isn't it, to see it from start to finish like that.
Yeah, and I think as well, that's been great to sort of go through the photographs, because I think there's been a few questions around the different jobs that are on site and different things like that. So pretty much your photographs has pretty much explained quite a few things as well. One question that we've had in though for Jamie is why did you want to go into construction?
I loved working outside. I quite like my sports and being outside in the fresh air. The beauty of construction is you can get to be in the office and you can get to be outside. So one of the things that people worry about is it raining or what's the environment like? Now, our offices, we've got fantastic offices. So we have all the photocopiers, like a professional offices. We have air conditioning when it's in some of the, you know, higher end offices. We have heating, and our offices are fantastic. And when people look at a construction site, they think it's dusty and noisy. But the offices we work in, they're almost like, you know, the offices, it's like the classrooms that you work in schools or normal offices. So we have whiteboards, we have all the technology, so we have laptops, we have mobile phones. And it's one of the things for me is that in construction you can get to work in pretty much any sort of location. So I've done some work in the Port of Liverpool, you can work on airports, you can work in hospitals, you can work in schools. Like for this project, we're working next to Pilkinson's, which has got the industrial heritage, which is fantastic. You can go and have a look at how they make the glass. So you never tend to sort of stay in one place. You always tend to look at other things. And in construction, you're creating things that other people, they use. So for example, if you built the Trafford Centre, it's a fantastic shopping experience for people that go and use it the weekends or in the evenings. Or so in construction, you're making something that other people will use, and that's one of the huge benefits, I think, to working in this career.
Great, thank you. And so we've had a question that says, my parents say that to learn a trade that you'll have a job for life. What do you think about that?
I mean, if you're an electrician, you can move into, you know, a data installer, you can move into a fire alarm engineer, you can move across, you know, it doesn't have to be one sort of trade. Sometimes some of the ones are, you know, you get trained up. If you're a scaffolder, potentially, then you tend to have to be quite fit, and you're working outside at the higher reaches of project. But you can move around. A ground worker, you don't have to just be, you can drive a machine, you can be laying concrete, you can be doing a shuttering joiner, you know, and that's the beauty, is that you're not always just doing the same thing. And because you're working on different projects, on one project you might be doing one thing, and then the next project you might then be doing another. But certainly the trades, you can progress through as well. So a joiner could go and be a dry liner, for example, doing the plasterboard. So you can move about between your trades, and that's the beauty of construction, is you don't just have to be good at your exams and your schooling. You can actually get, with the experience you can go and get with, I mean, Angie will tell you this, the apprenticeships that you can get as well, is you can get the support through, and you'll get paid experience for doing the training. So there's a lot of different roles for different types of people.
Yeah, and I've also seen people move from practical work in the trades to being teachers and assessors doing the MVQs in the industry. So I suppose, and it tends to be people who are getting a little bit older, maybe in the 50s and 60s. I've seen people retrain then as assessors and go into colleges and share their wealth of knowledge. So many different routes.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then we've had another question in that says about, do you actively encourage women to pursue careers in construction? Now, I know you've mentioned a lady that's working with you before, so I mean, you see more and more young women wanting to actually come into the construction industry.
Yes, we have, and you know, I'll always say it's got to be the right person for the job, and so, you know, we offer equal opportunities for recruitment. But yes, we need more women in the industry. I think the last time I looked, out of 4,000 staff, we got 20% who are ladies. So we'd like more. We're actually running or supporting a Women in Construction course. It begins on Wednesday, so you might see it on our Twitter feed later today, because we're going to be talking about what Wates are doing to help. So absolutely, yes. And if anyone wants to drop me a line about how they can get involved, I'd be happy to help.
Right. Yeah, the stereotypes of working in construction of long hours, and it's quite a male industry. It's totally changing, I think, nowadays. I think the offices are more professional, the setup, and I think there's so many different roles, from planning to surveying to being on site. I think there's so many different opportunities. I think it's great that we're supporting that, and I think the more women in construction, the better.
Thank you. I think we're out of time today. So I just want to thank you both for that really interesting and informative discussion this morning. Students, don't forget to check out our Creating Careers roadmap to evaluate today's session. Please go to our website where you'll find our employer videos, series on the YouTube channel and students pre-work resources at www.growthplatform.org/talent. You can email any questions and we will be happy to put them to Angie and Jamie again. And if you email them to us at careershub@growthplatform.org. Thanks for joining.